The fight for racial justice in the United States has been a monumental struggle that transcends the commonly recognized names. While the contributions of Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X are firmly etched in the national consciousness, there exists an equally important ensemble of Black pioneers whose work and sacrifice have been overshadowed. This article seeks to uncover these stories, piecing together the legacies of those who, without fame or national recognition, laid down foundations that supported the broader movements for justice, equality, and civil rights. In rediscovering these individuals, we find not only forgotten names, but also the diverse strategies and sacrifices that made the civil rights movement as multifaceted and resilient as it was. Long before the mid-20th century civil rights movement, activists and reformers were already battling to dismantle systems of oppression. Figures such as William Still and Sarah Parker Remond initiated critical work that included not only anti-slavery advocacy, but also the fostering of education and equal rights. In tracing the stories of early civil rights pioneers, we find individuals who faced immense resistance yet laid the ideological and logistical groundwork for what would later become the civil rights movement. One such individual was William Still, often regarded as the father of the Underground Railroad. Still's meticulous records and organizational acumen facilitated the escape of countless enslaved individuals. Despite the inherent dangers of his work, he persisted, utilizing networks across states to provide shelter and resources for freedom seekers. These early efforts illustrate the quiet resilience that marked the beginning of organized civil rights actions. Another vital yet often unheralded pioneer was Sarah Parker Remond, a noted abolitionist and public speaker. Known for her eloquent oratory skills, Remond defied societal expectations and spoke out vehemently against slavery on both sides of the Atlantic. Her diplomatic skills and cross-cultural appeal advanced the abolitionist cause abroad, raising international awareness and support that would later prove indispensable for the civil rights movement. As the civil rights movement gained traction in the early 20th century, a powerful set of activists worked within their communities to galvanize support and cultivate local resistance to racist practices. Among these was Lucy Gonzalez Parsons, a labor organizer whose life and work underscored the intersectionality of race, gender, and class struggles. As a former enslaved person turned radical activist, Parsons brought attention to the exploitation faced by Black workers and, through her advocacy, inspired an entire generation of labor-conscious activists. Another cornerstone figure, who remains relatively unknown, is T.R.M. Howard. Dr. Howard was a physician and entrepreneur whose work in Mississippi epitomized the multifaceted approach needed in civil rights advocacy. He not only provided medical care and economic opportunities to African Americans, but also established the Regional Council of Negro Leadership, which advocated for civil rights long before national attention turned to the South. His influence extended to figures like Medgar Evers and Rosa Parks, illustrating how local leaders created critical support networks for activists and community members alike. In the West, Charlotta Bay stood out as an indomitable force in civil rights advocacy and journalism. As the editor of the California Eagle, one of the oldest Black newspapers, she used her platform to expose injustices against African Americans, addressing housing discrimination, police brutality, and voter disenfranchisement. Bay's role in the media demonstrates the powerful intersection between journalism and activism, highlighting the way these pioneers used every available tool to dismantle oppressive structures. Within the courtrooms and legislative halls, numerous African American lawyers, judges, and policymakers dedicated themselves to chipping away at the legal foundations of segregation and discrimination. Charles Hamilton Houston, a highly influential lawyer and mentor to Thurgood Marshall, exemplified the critical, often unseen legal work that laid the foundation for cases like Brown versus Board of Education. Houston's strategy to dismantle separate but equal doctrines involved years of meticulous planning and preparation, underscoring the role of legal pioneers in the fight for civil rights. Likewise, Pauli Murray, a legal scholar and civil rights activist, made monumental contributions through her groundbreaking writings and activism. Murray's concept of Jane Crow highlighted the intersection of race and gender discrimination, which not only informed civil rights strategies, but also inspired future feminist and LGBTQ+ rights movements. Her writings, which critiqued systemic inequalities with an unparalleled incisiveness, helped shape a more inclusive understanding of civil rights that would later influence landmark decisions. A key figure in legislation, Robert Smalls was one of the first African Americans to serve in Congress during Reconstruction. Although he lived a century before the civil rights movement of the 1960s, Smalls' pioneering work in fighting for black rights in the political sphere set the stage for future legislative battles. His efforts to combat discriminatory policies and establish equitable legislation serve as an enduring reminder of the importance of political representation in the fight for justice. Education has always been a cornerstone of liberation, and the civil rights movement was no exception. Lucy Craft Laney, an educator from Georgia, established the Haynes Institute for Industrial and Normal Education in 1883, long before desegregation was even imagined. Laney's dedication to the education of African American youth set a precedent for civil rights advocacy through education, influencing a generation of leaders and scholars who would continue to push for equal access to quality education. Also significant was Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black history. Woodson's establishment of Negro History Week, which would eventually evolve into Black History Month, provided African Americans with a source of pride and a historical foundation upon which to build further activism. His work underscored the importance of self-knowledge and cultural pride in the battle for civil rights, asserting that understanding one's history is a crucial element of liberation. Nannie Helen Burroughs, another visionary educator and activist, pioneered vocational and educational opportunities for Black women, establishing the National Training School for Women and Girls in Washington, D.C. Her dedication to equipping young women with practical skills and education laid the groundwork for economic independence, which would be vital for the broader movement. Burroughs' work showcased the indispensable role of women educators in transforming communities and inspiring resilience. While some figures in the civil rights movement operated within the parameters of existing systems, others took a radical approach, seeking to redefine the very foundation of society. Hubert Harrison, known as the father of Harlem radicalism, epitomized this vision. His socialist beliefs, combined with an intense commitment to racial justice, provided a unique ideological perspective that influenced the Harlem Renaissance and the broader movement for racial equality. Harrison's prolific writings and speeches challenged both white supremacy and class exploitation, embodying a revolutionary spirit that resonated deeply within Black communities. Another powerful yet less celebrated figure was Claudia Jones, a Trinidadian-born activist and journalist who advocated for Black and feminist rights within the framework of communist ideology. Her intersectional approach to race, class, and gender created a powerful critique of American society that would inspire later generations of activists. Her leadership within the Communist Party and her contributions to the early British Black civil rights movement in the UK underscore the international dimension of Black activism. The civil rights movement was also deeply spiritual, drawing strength from religious traditions and leaders. Revered figures like Father Divine, a preacher who led the peace mission movement, wove a message of equality and interracial harmony into his teachings. Through his work, he created spaces where people of all races could gather, breaking down social barriers and challenging the norms of segregation. His influence is a testament to the power of faith-based leadership in mobilizing communities towards social justice. Howard Thurman, a theologian and mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., also played a vital yet under-recognized role in shaping the moral ethos of the civil rights movement. His writings on nonviolence and spiritual resistance provided a framework that many activists would later adopt, merging religious principles with practical activism. Thurman's influence illustrates the importance of spiritual grounding in the long, arduous journey towards civil rights.